There are moments in life when you can almost feel heaven leaning closer, moments when something inside you whispers that what you're about to hear isn't just another thought, another idea, or another motivational message, but a divine interruption. This is one of those moments, because the message I'm about to share with you today isn't born from inspiration, emotion, or imagination. It is a message that carries weight, urgency, and timing. A message that presses on your spirit as if God Himself is saying, "Listen, this is for you." Have you ever wondered why certain battles targeted you specifically? Why certain seasons felt heavier on your shoulders than on anyone else's? Why doors that opened easily for others demanded a war from you? It's because being chosen never comes without evidence. The attacks reveal the calling. The pressure reveals the assignment, and the resistance reveals the destiny. Today's message, Chosen Christian, is not just a title, not just a theme, and not just a thought. It's a spiritual wake-up call. It's God reminding you that you were intentionally selected for something bigger than your history, stronger than your fears, and greater than what you have yet seen. This is your moment to hear what heaven has been trying to tell you. Identity before assignment means understanding who you are in God before you ever understand what you are meant to do for Him. It is the foundation of a chosen Christian's life. Many people spend years searching for purpose, calling, or assignment, but God always begins with identity. Before God gives direction, He gives definition. Before He places you on a path, He tells you who you are. And until a believer understands their identity, they will always struggle with their calling. Identity is not built on achievements, circumstances, or the opinions of people around you. It is rooted in the truth that you were formed intentionally, redeemed purposefully, and called personally by God. A chosen Christian is someone who realizes that they did not choose God first, God chose them. This choice is not based on perfection or performance. It comes from God's heart, His design, and His eternal plan for your life. When you understand this, your confidence stops depending on how strong you feel, how much progress you have made, or how many mistakes you have avoided. Instead, your confidence begins to rest in the fact that God has stamped His identity on your life. Your assignment may change with seasons, but your identity remains steady and unshaken. Problems, failures, and delays cannot take away what God has placed within you. Identity before assignment also means that God works on your inner life before your outer mission. Many people want the assignment first. They want the stage, the opportunity, the influence, or the responsibility. But God develops character before calling. He shapes your heart before He shapes your platform. If a person steps into an assignment without identity, the assignment will crush them. But if they step into an assignment with identity, the assignment will grow through them. God never sends someone into purpose without first anchoring them in who they are. To be chosen is to understand that you were loved first, pursued first, and seen first. God knew every weakness, every fear, every wound, and every limitation, yet He still called you His own. This gives you strength when life becomes confusing. When doors close, identity reminds you that you are still chosen. When people misunderstand you, identity reminds you that God understands you perfectly. When the enemy tells you that you are not enough, identity reminds you that God says you are already His. Without this inner certainty, even the clearest assignment feels overwhelming. But when identity is rooted, even the biggest assignment feels possible. Identity before assignment teaches you that your value is not in what you do, but in who you belong to. The world measures worth by productivity, success, and results. But God measures worth by relationship. You are valuable because you carry His breath, His image, and His purpose. Your assignment may change depending on your season. Sometimes you may be hidden, sometimes visible, sometimes active, sometimes resting, but your worth is never reduced. This truth frees you from comparison. You no longer have to measure your life by someone else's progress because your identity is not tied to how fast or slowly others are moving. You are chosen uniquely, and your assignment will unfold uniquely. Another important aspect of identity before assignment is the security it builds. When you know who you are, you stop chasing acceptance and start walking in confidence. You stop begging for validation and start living from assurance. You stop trying to prove your worth and start expressing your calling. Assignment requires boldness, but identity gives birth to that boldness. You cannot walk in divine assignments if fear of rejection controls your life. Identity destroys that fear. It reminds you that God's yes is greater than anyone's no. Identity also gives you resilience. Assignments come with challenges, spiritual attacks, disappointments, and resistance. If identity is weak, every challenge will feel like a sign to quit. But when identity is strong, challenges feel like confirmations that you are on the right path. God builds identity so that storms cannot shake you, critics cannot stop you, and pressure cannot collapse you. You begin to operate from a place of spiritual maturity rather than emotional reaction. To be a chosen Christian is to wake up each day and remember that before God asks anything from you, He declares something over you. He calls you loved, forgiven, appointed, strengthened, and set apart. Assignment flows from identity, not the other way around. You are chosen not because of what you have done, but because of who God says you are. Divine timing is one of the most mysterious and powerful truths in the life of a chosen Christian. It reminds you that God does not move according to human clocks, human expectations, or human pressure. He moves according to His perfect wisdom, His eternal perspective, and His intentional plans. When God releases a message or a direction in a specific season, it is not accidental. It signals that heaven is aligning something in your life, preparing something within you, or opening something ahead of you. Divine timing means God speaks when the heart is ready, when the environment is right, and when the purpose has matured enough to be carried. People often struggle with waiting, especially when they feel called, chosen, or destined for something greater. They want answers now, breakthroughs now, movement now. But divine timing is not about delay, it is about alignment. God waits for the right moment because the right moment carries the right impact. A seed planted in the wrong season cannot grow, no matter how powerful the seed is. In the same way, even the most powerful message or calling cannot flourish if received outside its appointed time. When God speaks on days like December 8, 2025, it means the season has shifted. It means there is something He wants you to hear now, because now you are capable of understanding it, handling it, or acting on it. Divine timing also teaches you humility. It shows that your life is not controlled by timelines you create, but by the author who sees the entire story from beginning to end. You might feel late, but God says you are right on schedule. You might feel stuck, but God says He is still working. You might feel like nothing is changing, but God says the foundation is being built. Divine timing is God's way of protecting you from stepping into blessings that you are not yet prepared to carry. There are moments when He delays not to punish you, but to strengthen you. If the blessing comes too early, it becomes a burden. If the assignment comes too soon, it becomes a frustration. But when it comes in divine timing, it becomes a breakthrough. There are seasons when God is silent, and people mistake that silence for absence. But divine timing often includes silence because silence builds faith. When God is quiet, He is not ignoring you, He is shaping you. Silence tests your trust. It reveals whether you have faith only when God speaks or faith even when He pauses. Divine timing uses silence to deepen your roots so that when the message finally comes, you can stand firm without being shaken. Sometimes God waits until your heart is still enough to hear Him clearly. Sometimes He waits until distractions fade. Sometimes He waits until you've let go of things that would interfere with His voice. Divine timing is also about preparation. God begins working behind the scenes long before He reveals anything to you. He prepares people, opportunities, connections, and environments for the moment you step into your assignment. What seems sudden to you has been in preparation for years. There are moments when God releases a message because everything around you has finally aligned for your next step. You may have prayed for doors to open earlier, but those doors were still being built. You may have wanted answers sooner, but those answers required growth. healing, or maturity. When the time is right, what felt impossible becomes effortless. Another important aspect of divine timing is that it removes the burden of rushing. When you trust God's timing, you no longer feel the pressure to make things happen by force. You stop comparing your journey with others. You stop worrying about falling behind. You stop fearing that your opportunity will pass you by. Divine timing frees you from anxiety because you understand that what God has for you cannot be taken by anyone else, and what He has planned will not arrive late. You begin to walk with peace, confidence, and patience because you know everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Divine timing also teaches you to recognize moments of spiritual significance. Some days are ordinary, but some days carry divine weight. When God chooses a specific date to speak into your life, it means that heaven is highlighting something important. He wants your attention, your obedience, and your surrender. Messages that come in divine timing often carry instructions, warnings, encouragement, or preparation for what lies ahead. These moments mark transitions spiritually, mentally, emotionally, or practically. They signal that you are stepping into a new chapter. To understand divine timing is to trust that your life is guided, not random. Your steps are ordered, not accidental. Your journey is intentional, not chaotic. God speaks when He needs to, moves when the moment is right, and prepares you in ways you do not always recognize. Divine timing is God's assurance that every message, every instruction, and every season is arriving exactly when it is meant to shape you, strengthen you, and lead you into the purpose prepared for you. Refining before rising is one of the oldest patterns in the way God prepares His chosen people. It means that before God elevates someone, He shapes them. Before He trusts them with influence, He builds their inner strength. Before He reveals their purpose publicly, He works on them privately. Every chosen Christian goes through this process, whether they recognize it or not. It is the season where God removes what cannot go with you, strengthens what must remain, and forms the character that your calling will require. Refining is not punishment, it is preparation. It is God's way of making sure the weight of your future does not crush you. In the refining season, God often leads you through hiddenness. This is the time when no one sees your effort, no one notices your growth, and no one understands the battles you are fighting. Hiddenness can feel frustrating because you know you were made for more, yet you feel unseen. But this is exactly where God does His deepest work. Growth happens in silence. Roots grow underground long before a tree appears on the surface. In the same way, God strengthens your spirit, your habits, your prayer life, and your discipline in the unseen moments of your life. Many people desire the rise but do not want the refining. But without refining, rising becomes dangerous because elevation without preparation leads to collapse. Refining also exposes the weaknesses you didn't know you had. It brings to the surface the fears you've been hiding, the insecurities you've ignored, and the habits that are not aligned with God's plan. These moments can feel uncomfortable because God confronts areas that you hoped would remain buried. But He does this not to shame you, but to heal you. He cannot bless the version of you that is still holding on to things that will destroy your future. He loves you too much to allow you to rise with chains attached to your spirit. Refining frees you from those chains so that your rise is clean, strong, and lasting. Part of refining is learning obedience in small things. God watches how you handle lonely seasons, quiet seasons, waiting seasons, and testing seasons. He sees whether you remain faithful when no one is applauding. He sees whether you stay devoted when the outcome is unclear. He sees whether you trust Him when His presence feels distant. These small acts of obedience build spiritual muscles. When God sees that you can be trusted in the hidden room, He knows you can be trusted on the visible platform. The rise does not begin when people finally notice you. It begins when you remain faithful while no one sees you. Refining before rising also means that God cuts away the relationships, opportunities, and desires that do not align with your purpose. You may lose people you thought would walk with you forever. You may see doors closed that you prayed would open. You may feel confused when things fall apart, but what looks like loss is actually protection. God removes what will weaken your future. He takes away what distracts you. He dismantles anything built on your insecurity or your past wounds. Sometimes you cry over what God is removing, not knowing that you are crying over things that could have destroyed you later. The refining process requires trust, because you do not always see what God is saving you from. During refining, God sharpens your discernment. He teaches you the difference between emotional impulses and spiritual truth. He shows you how to hear His voice instead of the noise around you. He teaches you to depend on Him rather than on your own strength. A chosen Christian must learn how to recognize God's direction, because rising requires clarity, influence requires wisdom, impact requires spiritual maturity. Without discernment, rising leads to confusion. With discernment, rising becomes purposeful and stable. The refining season also builds humility. When God keeps you hidden, when He slows down your progress, when He delays your breakthrough, your ego gets challenged. You learn that you are not the source of your success, God is. This humility becomes a shield later when God elevates you. Many people fall after rising because pride enters their heart. Refining destroys pride before it can destroy your future. You learn gratitude, you learn endurance, you learn to honor God with every step. Refining before rising develops resilience. God allows you to face disappointment, betrayal, misunderstandings, and closed doors because these experiences toughen your spirit. They teach you how to rise again after falling. They prepare you to handle criticism and pressure when your calling becomes visible. A rise without resilience cannot last, because visibility attracts both blessings and battles. God ensures that by the time you rise, you can withstand storms that would have crushed you in an earlier season. This entire process is necessary, because God is not just preparing a moment for you, He is preparing you for a lifetime of purpose. Anyone can rise for a moment, but only the refined can remain standing. The refining season shapes your identity, strengthens your spirit, and prepares you for the weight of what God has planned. It is the hidden work that makes the visible rise possible. Courage to stand apart means choosing God even when the world chooses something else. It is the ability to remain firm in faith when culture, society, friends, or circumstances pressure you to compromise. A chosen Christian is never called to blend in, they are called to shine. But shining requires courage, and courage is not simply the absence of fear. Courage is the decision to stay faithful when fear, doubt, or loneliness tries to silence your conviction. Standing apart is not always comfortable, but it is always necessary for those whom God has set apart for a greater purpose. This courage begins when you recognize that following God often means walking a path that others do not understand. People may question your choices. They may misunderstand your decisions. They may label your convictions as unnecessary or extreme. But courage means staying rooted in what God has spoken rather than what others expect. It means trusting God's direction more than the approval of people. It means realizing that being chosen sets you on a different frequency, a different mindset, a different standard. You cannot walk like everyone else because your calling is not like everyone else's. Courage to stand apart also means saying no to things that are easy but not aligned with your purpose. It is easy to follow the crowd. It is easy to lower your standards when others do. It is easy to silence your values so you don't stand out. But God does not build chosen Christians through ease. He builds them through conviction. When you refuse to compromise integrity, purity, honesty, faith, your obedience, you are not just protecting your character, you are protecting your calling. Every time you choose God over comfort, you strengthen your spiritual backbone. Every time you choose holiness over acceptance, you grow stronger in identity. Every time you choose truth over popularity, you become more anchored in purpose. Standing apart also requires you to stop comparing yourself to others. When you know you are chosen, you understand that your journey will not look like anyone else's. Others may rise faster, gain success sooner, or follow easier routes, but courage means trusting God's timing for your own life. Comparison is the enemy of calling. because it distracts you from your own assignment. When you measure your life against someone else's path, you lose sight of the unique direction God has tailored for you. Courage means staying steady in your lane, even when everyone else seems ahead. Another part of standing apart is enduring loneliness without losing faith. Many seasons in a chosen Christian's life feel like isolation. You might feel like you're walking alone when others walk in groups. You might feel like the only one trying to live right. You might feel like the only one committed to spiritual growth. But loneliness in God's presence is far more valuable than crowds without purpose. God often separates those He calls so He can pour into them without distraction. That separation builds strength, clarity, and sensitivity to God's voice. Courage means embracing seasons where God removes you from noise so He can shape you in stillness. To stand apart in a world full of compromise also requires courage to speak truth. God places messages, convictions, and spiritual insight in the hearts of His chosen, not so they can stay silent, but so they can shine as voices of light. Speaking truth in a world that prefers darkness takes boldness. Living according to God's standards in environments where they are mocked takes inner strength. But chosen Christians understand that silence is not an option when God has called them to be light. They speak gently, but they speak truthfully. They live humbly, but they live boldly. Their presence challenges darkness, even when their words remain unspoken. Courage to stand apart also means choosing long-term purpose over short-term pleasure. It means understanding that your future matters more than momentary satisfaction. It means protecting your spirit from distractions that may feel good now but hurt you later. When you choose discipline, self-control, and obedience, you are not losing anything. You are investing in the destiny God has created for you. Courage demands sacrifice. It demands saying no to temptation, no to doubt, no to negativity, and no to voices that pull you away from God's plan. This courage is developed through relationship with God. You cannot stand apart without the strength that comes from prayer, scripture, and spiritual intimacy. When you spend time with God, you receive boldness that the world cannot give. You receive confidence that circumstances cannot shake. You receive clarity that confusion cannot interrupt. A chosen Christian stands apart not because they are naturally strong, but because God strengthens them from the inside. Standing apart becomes easier when you realize that you are not standing alone. Heaven backs you. God walks with you. His Spirit guides you. His presence strengthens you. Courage grows when you understand that being chosen means being supported by divine power. The world may not understand your stand, but God honors it. And every time you choose to stand apart for Him, He prepares a place for you to rise where no compromise could ever take you. Purpose requires alignment, means that you cannot step fully into what God has designed for you unless your life, habits, mindset, and priorities line up with His will. Being chosen gives you identity, but alignment gives you movement. Many people have calling, but not everyone has alignment. God can place a powerful purpose inside you, but if your daily life pulls in the opposite direction, that purpose remains dormant. Alignment is the bridge between who God says you are and who you actually become through obedience and discipline. It is not a one-time decision. It is a continuous posture of surrender, correction, and spiritual focus. Alignment begins with the heart. Before God asks for your actions, He asks for your inner posture. A divided heart cannot carry divine purpose. If part of you wants God, but another part of you chases comfort, validation, or worldly approval, purpose becomes lukewarm. A chosen Christian must train their heart to desire what God desires. This requires honesty, prayer, and willingness to let God expose hidden motives. When your heart aligns with God, everything else becomes easier to align because your desires match His voice. When your desires are scattered, your life becomes scattered too. Alignment brings clarity and focus, turning confusion into direction. Alignment also demands discipline in your habits. Purpose does not flourish in a life filled with inconsistency, distraction, and spiritual laziness. If God has called you to spiritual depth, but your habits feed spiritual weakness, you experience inner conflict. You feel called but unprepared. You feel chosen but unfocused. A chosen Christian must align their habits with their assignment. Prayer becomes a priority, not an emergency response. Scripture becomes nourishment, not a formality. Boundaries become protective walls, not limitations. You cannot expect purpose to grow in soil you do not tend. Habits create the environment in which calling can breathe and expand. Another layer of alignment is emotional maturity. Many assignments collapse not because the person is uncalled, but because they are unaligned emotionally. Purpose requires stability. It requires the ability to handle pressure, criticism, waiting seasons, and spiritual testing without falling apart. When your emotions are unaligned, every challenge feels like a sign to quit. But when your emotions align with truth instead of feelings, you become unshakable. You learn to pray instead of panic, trust instead of complain, and persevere instead of retreat. God will not place you in rooms where your emotions have the power to sabotage your purpose. Emotional alignment is essential for spiritual longevity. Alignment also involves relationships. The people around you either pull you closer to your purpose or slowly drag you away from it. A chosen Christian must be intentional in choosing companions who strengthen faith, encourage growth, and respect calling. Misaligned relationships drain spiritual energy, distract focus, and delay destiny. Sometimes God removes certain people not because they are bad, but because they cannot travel with you to the next level. Purpose often demands separation. It demands that you choose influence over comfort, destiny over company, and growth over familiarity. Alignment requires courage to let go of connections that weaken your walk with God. Your mindset is another critical part of alignment. You cannot carry a divine purpose with a defeated mentality. If your mind is filled with doubt, fear, insecurity, or comparison, you will sabotage your own calling long before the enemy does. Alignment means renewing your mind daily, replacing lies with truth, and training yourself to think according to God's promises rather than your past experiences. A renewed mind hears God clearly, sees possibilities where others see limits, and walks in confidence instead of confusion. When your mindset aligns with purpose, your life naturally follows. Alignment also means obedience in the small things. Many people wait for grand assignments, but God tests alignment through simple instructions. Forgive when you don't want to. Pray when you're tired. Give when it's difficult. Serve when no one applauds. These small acts show God that your heart is aligned with His voice. When God sees obedience in little things, He releases greater assignments. Alignment is proven not by what you dream about doing for God, but by what you consistently do when no one is watching. Purpose is built on obedience, not emotional excitement. Purpose also requires alignment because God's plans often unfold step by step, not all at once. If you are not aligned in the early steps, you will miss the later ones. God reveals direction to people who walk in direction. Alignment creates momentum. Every obedient step opens a new door. Every aligned decision strengthens spiritual sensitivity. Every moment you choose God's way over your own adds weight to your calling. Purpose is not discovered in a single moment. It is walked out through aligned choices. Alignment ultimately demands surrender. You cannot be fully aligned with God's purpose if you are still holding pieces of your life tightly in your hands. Surrender means trusting God's timing, God's methods, and God's plan even when it doesn't match your expectations. It means releasing control and saying yes to God's direction even when it stretches you. Alignment is the posture of someone who understands they are chosen, not just chosen to receive blessings, but chosen to walk in obedience. When a chosen Christian aligns their heart habits, emotions, relationships, and mindset with God, purpose begins to flow effortlessly. What once felt heavy becomes natural. What once felt confusing becomes clear. Purpose is not just a calling you receive, it is a lifestyle you align your entire being with. Only then can you step fully into the divine assignment prepared for your life. Carrying God's message means becoming a vessel, someone God can trust to speak live and reflect His truth in a world full of noise, distraction, and spiritual confusion. For a chosen Christian, this is not optional, it is part of their identity. When God entrusts you with a message, it means He has found a heart willing to listen, a spirit willing to surrender, and a life willing to obey. God does not speak randomly or casually. He places messages in people who have gone through seasons of breaking, refining, learning, and growing. Carrying God's message is both an honor and a responsibility, because what you carry has the power to shape lives, shift atmospheres, and change the direction of someone's soul. To carry God's message, you must first cultivate the ability to hear Him. God's voice is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it comes as a whisper, a nudge, a conviction, or a sudden clarity in your spirit. Hearing God requires intimacy. It requires quiet moments when you silence the noise of the world so you can recognize His presence. Many people want to speak for God, but they do not spend time with God. A chosen Christian understands that the message does not come through talent or knowledge. It comes through relationship. God speaks to those who make space for Him. When you consistently seek Him, you begin to recognize His voice the way you recognize the voice of someone you love deeply. Carrying God's message also requires purity of heart. God does not place His words in hearts filled with bitterness, pride, or hidden motives. He looks for vessels who desire His will more than recognition, more than approval, more than personal elevation. Purity does not mean perfection, it means sincerity. It means having a heart willing to be corrected, humbled, shaped, and cleansed. When God sees that your motives are aligned with His, He releases clarity, wisdom, and spiritual insight that others cannot see. A pure heart becomes a clear channel through which God's message flows without distortion. Another important part of carrying God's message is boldness. A message from God often challenges comfort zones. It may ask you to speak truth when truth is unpopular. It may push you to encourage someone at the exact moment they are losing hope. It may require you to confront something within yourself or in others. Boldness does not mean aggression, it means obedience. It means responding to God's prompting even when it feels scary, inconvenient, or misunderstood. When you carry God's message, you realize that your job is not to be liked, but to be faithful. God takes care of the impact, you take care of the obedience. Carrying God's message also requires sensitivity to the season. God's timing matters. A word spoken too early can confuse. A word spoken too late can lose power. A chosen Christian learns to wait for God's moment, to discern when the message is ready to be released. This sensitivity comes from spiritual maturity. As you grow, you learn that delivering God's message is not about emotional impulses. It is about divine timing. Sometimes God reveals something to you long before He asks you to speak it. He shows you so He can shape you first. Only then does He allow you to share it with others. Sensitivity to timing is what turns a message into transformation. When God gives you a message, it is not just for others, it is for you too. Carrying God's message means letting His words reshape your character before you ever share them with anyone else. God does not speak to make you feel spiritual. He speaks to make you grow. The message you carry often confronts your weaknesses, stretches your faith, and deepens your understanding. Many times, the message becomes a mirror before it becomes a ministry. You cannot authentically carry a message you have not lived. God speaks to transform the messenger first, so the message comes out genuine, powerful, and rooted in experience rather than theory. Carrying God's message also requires endurance. Not everyone will accept what God gives you to say. Some may reject it, ignore it, or question it. But endurance allows you to remain faithful even when your obedience goes unnoticed. A chosen Christian understands that results belong to God. You are responsible for delivering the message, not controlling the outcome. Endurance keeps you steady when discouragement whispers that your efforts don't matter. It reminds you that every word spoken in obedience plants seeds that God will grow in His time. Another essential aspect of carrying God's message is compassion. God entrusts messages to those who feel deeply for others, who care about souls, who understand the weight of spiritual responsibility. If your heart is hardened, the message becomes cold. If your heart is compassionate, the message carries life. Compassion allows you to speak truth gently, encourage sincerely, and correct lovingly. It protects the message from becoming harsh and ensures it reflects God's heart, not human frustration. Carrying God's message also means living in a way that supports the message. Your life becomes a testimony, a reflection of the truth you proclaim. People listen more to who you are than to what you say. If your lifestyle contradicts God's message, credibility is lost. But when your lifestyle aligns with your calling, your words carry authority. A chosen Christian understands that their behavior, decisions, and daily actions are part of the message. You are not just delivering God's message, you are becoming it. Ultimately, carrying God's message means embracing the identity of a vessel, someone who does not speak for their own glory, but for the glory of the one who called them. It means being trusted with heaven's whispers and earthly assignments. It means living with ears tuned to God's voice, hands ready for His work, and a heart fully surrendered to His will. You carry His message not because you are perfect, but because you are chosen, willing, and aligned with His purpose. When you step back and look at everything God has been saying through this message, one truth rises above all others. Being a chosen Christian is not an empty title, it is a divine assignment. You were chosen to walk through seasons that others may never understand, not because you are stronger on your own, but because God placed a strength in you that activates only under pressure. You were chosen to carry light into places you once feared, to break patterns that ran through your family for generations, to rebuild what life tried to destroy, and to rise even when you felt too exhausted to continue. Everything you lived through was not random, not wasted, and not unseen. It was shaping, refining, preparing, and positioning you for what God called you to become. This entire message is God whispering to you that He hasn't overlooked a single prayer, a single tear, or a single moment where you held on even when you didn't know why. He is calling you into a new season where clarity replaces confusion, purpose replaces wandering, and courage replaces hesitation. You are chosen not because you are perfect, but because you are willing. You are chosen not because you have all the answers, but because you trust the one who does. You are chosen because heaven has work to do through your voice, your story, your obedience, and even your scars. This identity will not only shift how you see God, it will shift how you see yourself. And as you carry this message forward, remember that God didn't choose you for a moment, He chose you for a mission. Every battle you survived has become proof that you were built for more. Every mountain in front of you will become a testimony once you climb it. Every door that closes will redirect you to the one God prepared long before you arrived. Step boldly into what comes next, because the God who chose you has already walked ahead of you. I wish you strength, clarity, and courage as you step into this calling with a renewed heart. May every day ahead remind you that you are guided, protected, and deeply loved by the God who selected you with intention. Good luck as you walk into your next chapter with faith that cannot be shaken. Thank you for allowing me to help you shape this message. It's an honor to stand with you as you grow into everything God designed you to be.